Today we are in Safety Harbor with Charlie Jirousek. Is that pronounced correct, Charlie?
Yes.
Yeah, of Arrow Music. And Charlie is, now I don't know if I got this word right, luthier. Is that
I'm a luthier, yes.
okay? That's the way it's pronounced.
Luthier, yes.
Okay, and he got some interesting stuff to show us. There's just a ton of guitars here, and he makes guitars from nothing, custom made. So if you ever need a guitar made, this is the guy to come to. Where's that guitar we were just talking about? This one right here. You were telling me about this.
Well, I was saying that I save most every instrument that comes through because it's unusual. I'm looking for different. This is an old K. It's a very hand-painted. Somebody stripped it, refinished it. It has no value to speak of. But look at the neck on it. It has stripes that go down the neck sideways, bent wood to make the shape of the head. I've seen thousands of instruments, and never have I seen one built like that. So I saved it purely for that. This actually was a cabin guitar. I saved it. It sat out at my cabin for years and years and years. Very stable. Doesn't sound real good. It's like a $20 guitar, you know. But it's unusual in how the neck was made. So that's why I saved it. Most of my collection was on that premise.
Okay.
If it was different, if it was something you didn't see very often, or somebody experimented making it, I wanted to put it in the collection. And some of them aren't very expensive, but some of them are, because there was some young, just this thing sitting in front of me. That was made out of oak. How many guitars you see made out of oak today? Not many.
No.
Not many. This is a Lion and Healy from about 1910, 1915. And it's an extremely good guitar. This is more of the expensive instrument. Has a great big huge voice.
Yeah, I'll say.
It sounds more like Brazilian rosewoods. But nobody uses it anymore because it's hard to finish. Big huge pores on oak. And that's a lot of trouble for the manufacturer to turn it out.
So you're telling me this guitar is almost 100 years old?
Yeah. Oh, half the
Still
ones
in
in this
good shape?
room are that old. Still in good shape. Well, it had its neck reset. It's had a bridge replaced. I made the bridge that's on it probably about 8 or 10 years ago. This isn't even my guitar anymore. It sits here because my roommate Bob plays on it a lot.
Okay.
This is his favorite guitar.
There you go.
So it sits here where you can grab it.
All right. Okay. Well, we've got quite an unusual assortment of guitars here. So, okay, Charlie, why don't you tell me about these instruments here?
Well, these two are what you would call Italian style or roundback mandolins. They were made probably about 100 years ago. This one's it's carved out between each rib of white. The rosewood's been carved, dished out. The other one's made out of bird's eye maple. The inlays on these two are incredible. This one in particular, the lady with a chariot riding out of the clouds with doves pulling her, with that green scarf flopping her. It's all in mother of pearl.
Can you get that, Joe?
Handmade.
Great. And then there's a butterfly on the other one. Now, what's this signature here?
That says Carlo Robelli. That's the man who made it in Italy. This one was made in New York City. The butterfly on that has 42 pieces of pearl in it.
And I'll guarantee you this isn't a Carlo Robelli made in China that's sold at the big store.
This one dates back a ways.
This is the real deal.
I look for the older ones because I want to hear their voices. This is made in 1860.
Wow, 1860. And listen to it.
I mean, you compare it to a modern guitar, it's got a very different voicing to it. And I wanted to hear what these were like. Because we don't have recordings of things from 1860. There wasn't any electronic anything going on. The one sitting up here, this one is 1849, or 46 actually, 1846. Again, a whole different shape, but a little bit of a minor tuning. It has, the tuning pegs on it are made out of horn, like buffalo horn or something like that. But this one's made the body out of pear wood.
Pear wood, from a pear tree.
Yeah.
No partridge.
I have been finding, actually, I like citrus wood a lot. I use local Duncan grapefruit for binding on guitars. It makes wonderful cream-colored binding, and it's very easy to work with.
Okay.
It's probably one of the easiest to work with woods there is. Citrus handles beautifully.
Okay, now you have a shop right here on premise too, where you build the guitars, and we're going to make our way back to that eventually. But there's so much stuff here that it's quite a thing. Now, okay, I'm gonna let you walk over here, Charlie, and tell us what this thing is.
That is a Dyer Harp Guitar. It was made by the Larsons in Chicago about 1915, sold under the Dyer label, and it is meant as a rhythm instrument to give volume to the string band. Again, this is before electricity. So you put a chord with your harp strings behind the key you're playing in. And when you strum the chord, you get a very loud guitar that has all kinds of overtones. It just rings and sings. They just keep going. It's like having a reverb unit built into it.
Wow.
But it filled in string bands when you had to compete with banjo mandolins and a whole swarm of them maybe playing the melody. You needed a lot. And guitars weren't loud, so they started doing this to give you volume. When electricity happened, these all fell out of favor. There are a few people who play them now, but not a lot. I love it. That's my loudest guitar.
And what craftsmanship that had gone into the building of that. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and the wood they had available to build the instruments with 100 years ago was a big difference from what's available today.
Now, what's this thing up here with all the string? It's kind of like
a zither.
A zither.
It has a fingerboard, but otherwise it's a harp. The one next to it is more like a bowed psaltery. You would run a small bow between all the pegs on the top. Actually, you can follow. They had cards that came with it to tell you exactly where to bow it. So it's easy to play. These are just a set of chords that go, so you can strum a chord behind it. Not exactly in tune.
Unbelievable.
And the round-back mandolins, I started saving those because they were good examples of everybody's workmanship. If I couldn't identify something by having to afford to own the guitar, I could buy the mandolin because nobody wanted them. And I started rebuilding some of them. Some of them were quite fun. And again, back to before electricity. That one's got 12 strings on it, which meant it would be a lot louder. And you get 3 or 4 of those together, you get a lot of sound going. You fill up a hall.
Well, you've been doing a great job of collecting these instruments, that's for certain. And earlier you told me that this collection has been building for about 40 years.
Yeah, it's been over a long time. And people would bring me instruments that are broken, they couldn't afford to fix them. I would buy them reasonable, hang them up and say, maybe I'll fix it someday. Right now my project is pretty much going through the collection, fixing them all. Most of them will be put up for sale. But I want to restore them first. I want to hear the voices on all of them first.
So if somebody comes in and says, hey, I'd like to buy that one, Charlie, you say, okay, come back in 6 months after I fix it up for you.
Maybe. I kind of don't turn people loose to just come pick one out of the collection, because then it'll turn out to be one of those ones that takes me 1,500 hours to fix and it's worth $200. There's probably a couple hundred of my instruments that aren't worth fixing.
Okay.
That's part of the price of learning how to do this, is buying stuff that you discover later that, I shouldn't have bought that. A lot of it's of interest, but it won't get fixed. Some of it was experiments. This one's from 1911. It has a arched top, arched back, round like a mandolin, carved. It has a spruce flat top inside of it with F-holes inside of it. So it has a second top in the middle.
Wow.
CBR Manufacturing, whoever that is, 1911. Stays in tune.
And he knows how to play them, too.
Things like that I find of interest.
Yeah. Well, even now, like these 2 guitars here, the one definitely has a Florida motif. And I'm not quite sure. It almost looks like a Hawaiian motif on the other one.
Hawaiian guitars. There was a Hawaiian craze that happened from, when the ukulele boom took off about 1911, 1912. By 1915, everybody was playing ukuleles, and Hawaiian guitars were very common. Everybody wanted to play the lap slide style Hawaiian, and then these instruments were made, a lot of them, for that. Straight saddles on them. You couldn't, they aren't compensated, they're angled so that they would be play in tune if you were playing it as a regular hold it up 6-string guitar. The cowboy guitars came along late 20s into the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see this decoration on this, and this one here actually says Gene Autry on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're definitely a
They
string of them there.
Instruments for beginning students. Some of them, at the beginning, they were made very well out of good materials. By the end of it, they were pretty cheap instruments.
Okay.
To the extreme of ones like this, this one. These are both made out of cardboard.
Look at these.
These are both cardboard guitars. One's Walt Disney, Davy Crockett, and the other's Roy Rogers.
Can you hear the audio on that, Joe? What he's saying? Great.
But
cardboard guitars.
well, they were meant to be played with by a young kid who never was really going to learn to play on the guitar. He just wanted it to strum away on.
Get them started. Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Okay, now. Well, continuing our thing, now you've got this enclosed case down here. You've got a grouping down there.
These are violin ukes. They were more of a bowed psaltery. Again, you got a single bow. There's a little one right there that you would go back and forth on them. Here's one they called the Banjo Lin. These were sold door to door. And the bow walks down the edge of it, playing on the notes down the side. The chords are in the middle. Of course, thoroughly out of tune. But it's a bowed psaltery. This has been around for 2,000 years, really. There's two more of them tucked down in the corner. I don't think you can see them from where you are. That are they call ukulins, and they're the size of this one, the same length, but they've got a guitar-shaped body on them.
I know I've never seen anything like it before.
They were mostly sold door to door, along with these multi-string zither-type instruments that are hanging around here that were, in the 30s and 40s, people would go from farmhouse to farmhouse and town to town just selling instruments to the people who were stranded out on the prairie or sitting in South Cincinnati and got nothing else to do, or wherever they were at the time.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of instruments were sold for that reason. I think 1910, 1920, the most commonly sold instrument was a zither. And now you never hear of them.
No.
I don't know of anybody who plays one.
There you go. I mean, you pointed me. Those are those instruments hanging up there, and like is
one over each, one over that.
One over each doorway. Okay. Yeah, you won't be able to get a shot at that one because of the light. But okay. Well, let's continue. Now, is that a little small banjo with a little bit of artistry on the back?
This is a banjo ukulele. It came out of a collection from a guy who had this fellow who was the cartoonist give it to him. If you look really closely, there's the guy's name, Claude Tingler. He was the artist that had these cartoon characters in the paper back in the 20s.
Can you see those, Joe?
I mean, these are actually from characters that, you know.
And then it also says USS Utah, U.S. Navy, 1924 on it.
Yeah, the Utah went down in Pearl Harbor. But this is... You got Charlie Chaplin in the middle of it, but the character up on the top, I don't know his name, but I've certainly seen him in the cartoons. This is the guy who drew the character. And he gave it to this fella in Tarpon Springs who hung on to it for all those years. And I ended up buying his whole collection of instruments. I think I've got 25 instruments.
Very nice, very nice.
I've had people bring me instruments just to put them in the collection because they said, you'll save them. In a way, I've joked for long years that this is a self-breeding population. It generates more stuff.
There you go. People come
There's
in.
a little squeeze box that I couldn't dig it out at the moment. But it's a little concertina, English-made rosewood. It belonged to a magician by the name of Shazam. That's where the word Shazam came from. He toured with Houdini. Did a lot of European tours with him. And I ended up with the picture that he used on stage on the little squeeze box. He left it to his daughter, who lived to be 94 and died here in Clearwater. And when she died, the guy who got the squeeze box and the paperwork to go with it just came over and gave it to me.
Oh, that's...
They put it in the collection, so it gets preserved.
Well, there you have it. And it's quite a collection. And we've just begun. There's so much more. Okay, as you can see, all along the top here, there's more. Those are all ukuleles or mandolins. Okay.
Yeah, mostly mandolin. Mostly American made. This one's European with the guy's picture on it. That one came from Canada, actually. I have friends I do know up there. There's several big harmonies stuffed in this corner. I don't know if you can see them. A Broadway, a Patrician. The next one's a Hollywood, and then there's a Catalina that's pink and black.
Okay, so these are these instruments here that he's talking about.
It's hard to dig them out of the pile.
Yeah.
Ones that I play on, like this one. This is a Gibson. This is about 1924 Gibson. That's an L4. Snakehead, this is Lloyd Lorer, actually. Great big, huge voiced guitar, and it sits here because I play on it a lot. I started collecting. I worked for Gibson for 15 years, and I saw a lot of their instruments, so I started collecting them.
Oh, there you go.
And now I have about 40 or 50 of them that are this big. Different models, different. The Harp Guitar, the Style U Harp Guitar.
Okay, that's this one here, Joe.
That's 1918. The Banjo ukulele and the other ukulele are both 1927. That's the first year they made ukuleles. Gibson was real slow getting into the ukulele and the Hawaiian thing. They were very slow.
And this, now you mentioned this earlier, and you called it a harp guitar.
Yes.
Okay. And that we did have one like that over there. Is that
similar instrument?
Similar.
This has more drone strings, and you're more limited in that you need a piano tuning wrench to tune it. And you have a chromatic scale, so if you change keys very often, you start sounding like you're pounding inside a piano. It's strictly a rhythm instrument. You play just chords behind, and somebody else is doing melody line.
Wow.
Not as versatile as one would think, but very loud. The black-topped one beside it is a Mandocello. That's 1908. That was made.
I keep going, I'm so astonished. I don't know what to say. I say,
This one, that's Italian, probably about 1880. I have the back for that. I have put it back together. I want to hear what it sounds like. I bought it in pieces as usual because I want to hear what it sounds like. And it has this classical type construction, which I use building the guitars. Most people use a dovetail joint. This is classical style, but it was a steel string guitar, and a great big one. So I want to hear what its voice sounds like. But
so someday you're going to put it together.
Well, someday it's going to be the top one on the list.
There you go.
Every week I have been fixing one or two instruments, whatever is at hand, trying to get caught up with things to see what some of these are, whether they're worth fixing or not.
All right. Okay, so we're going to head out to your shop, and let's take a look at number one on the list, see what he's working on right now.
All right.
Okay, so now we went out back to Charlie's shop, and this is number one. So tell us about guitar number one that he's going to work on. Oh, we brought from inside the first guitar he's ever worked on.
Well, this is the first one I ever made.
Oh,
actually.
there you go. The first one.
The first one I ever worked on was about 1964. I was a harmony. I started doing inlays in it, actually. But this one, I set out to build this guitar. This is what started the whole business, was building this instrument. And it's had a long and varied history. I made this I finished it in 1972. You'll have to excuse me.
Yeah, this is business, so pause.
1770, rather. Really, really old, beautiful instrument.
You rolling? Good.
But that's what I had to trade to get this back again. It went away to my partner when I first started Arrowhead Music, because I had a good guitar and he didn't. Now, I had set out to build this instrument, and within 6 months, when I finished this, I had found a good Holtzapfel 12-string, which is what I was looking to build. This is a ladder brace 12-string. The braces go straight across it. It has a huge maple plate under the bridge. The top's over 1/8 of an inch thick. It's a huge slab of wood. It's a whole different building style than what they're doing today. But this has been tuned to concert pitch, which is high for a 12-string, since 1972. I haven't tried to tune that in several months. It's been sitting in a case actually since I played at Heritage Village here.
Okay.
Because it went around and sat outside.
And that's where I met Charlie at Heritage Village. I went up to him and introduced myself, said, let's do a show on what you do.
Well, this one was all Brazilian rosewood. The back, sides, and the neck are Brazilian rosewood.
Huh.
It transmits sound like crazy. It's just really alive. I mean, it's just what taps down here is the same thing from that end. The neck sound runs up and down it like... I built the neck joint like a classical guitar is made. Not like a modern steel string which has a dovetail joint, or most of the newest ones now they bolt on the neck. I don't approve of either of those. It interrupts the sound flow, and this one stands up good for that.
Yeah, I know. I looked inside my guitar, and there's like an Allen wrench bolt. That's what you're talking about?
No, that's the truss rod that goes down the length of the neck. It's inside. You can adjust that, and that's if the neck bows. You tighten up on it, it pulls it back again. Because the neck has to be straight or you can't get a low action. No straight neck, no low action.
And for the people who don't know, tell them what low action and high action is, because I know I had a high action guitar when the first guitar, or one of the first guitars I bought, and I almost quit playing guitar. I was going to throw the thing away because it just hurt my fingers too much.
Well, there's a couple of things that affect it. First, how straight is the neck? If the neck itself is straight, and I check it by just taking a 2-foot steel ruler and putting it on the guitar and saying, yeah, okay, that's flat. It wants to sit maybe half the thickness of a business card. There's a bow. There is a little relief, but it's not much. If it's too high off the nut, it'll feel like you're playing on a cheese cutter.
Now, and you're talking,
it'll just really kill your fingers.
And you're talking about the strings coming off of the top white thing, which they call the nut.
Is the nut. And then I measure the height of the strings at the 12th fret. A standard full-size guitar should be 6/64ths under the thin strings and 8/64ths under the wound heavy strings.
Okay, so
somebody who's playing bluegrass, for instance, it would be a 6/8 action, they would call it.
Okay.
But it's in 64ths of an inch at the 12th fret.
Okay.
And you can measure that pretty quickly on any guitar you see.
Yeah, yeah. So all you people at home that have guitars, you can go check your own action with those measurements.
Yes, that is true. The electric guitars, they've got a lower height at the 12th fret. A really good action on an electric would be 3 and 5 in 64ths of an inch.
Okay, so now we just got a phone call when we started this, and it happened to be the guy that he had to buy this guitar back off of, calling from Wisconsin. Probably wants to get it back, but my guess is Charlie ain't going to sell this one again.
No, this one stays with me now. I collected the wood during the 60s. I spent years getting up the materials to get this together to build this instrument. And then when I finally did it, suddenly I had one of the original ones from the Carl Holtzhoffel in Baltimore, Maryland. And it was an incredible guitar. Not that I didn't like this, but my partner didn't have one, so I went to him.
Okay.
And he died several years ago, and it went to an ex-wife. And the ex-wife traded it to Norman, who just called me on the phone, who then traded it to me. So it's back here again, and it will stay here.
And isn't that something that we pulled it out and the phone rings and it's the guy Norman who's calling?
Yeah, right. Well, there's one that I've just about finished sitting here. This is probably about the 35th or maybe almost the 40th 6-string guitar that I've made. This one's all mahogany. It has a solid mahogany one-piece neck on it. I actually have to polish it and glue on the bridge, and I'm done. It should be a pretty loud guitar. It makes it sounds pretty good no matter where you tap on it. It's got good tap tones. I pay a lot of attention when I'm building one to the actual sounds in the pieces of wood that I'm assembling it from. They don't rustle in my fingers. I don't want to put them in a guitar. This is bound in Duncan grapefruit. That's what the white binding is. It's got herringbone around the top. That I buy in strips already made up. You have to split it in two after you soak it when you put it in so it'll bend easily, but that's not that bad of a problem. The top on this is German white spruce.
Now, where do you get your woods from? Do you just, is there like some
It's
place?
difficult.
It's difficult. It's a
The
secret.
white spruce that's on this one I bought from Goetz in Erlangen, Germany in 1972. I've had this top since then. Actually, the mahogany back sides and neck on this one, the sides came from Goetz back then. The neck came out of Alaska. I don't know how the devil they got mahogany there, but that's where I found the board. Of all of the Sitka spruce that I use, I bought from Alaska in big chunks. I have a lot of rosewood I use. Bolivian rosewood. I went to Bolivia. I bought 7 tons of it.
Okay, so he's going to pull out.
Let's see. I will use. This is Bolivian rosewood.
So this is the way a guitar starts out.
Yeah,
How did
I
he?
end up with, well, I end up starting out with. Let me walk just past you for a second. I start off with chunks of wood like this.
Huh.
This is Bolivian rosewood. In this case, I have a saw in Minnesota that's a big resaw, and I will cut this board into probably about 10 slices. And then it comes out of the saw looking more like this. There's one when I messed up. I wasn't paying attention and the saw ran out on me. So that'll turn into a mandolin. That was a good guitar back. But this is what I've resawed up there. This somebody else resawed. Actually, I think that came from a guy who came and traded me stuff. This is out of the Martin factory. But it was real curly, so they rejected it. I like the curl in mahogany. So. That one's bird's eye maple. This has been resawed myself. Out of a 1-inch board. You book match them so the patterns match. You split it down the middle and open it up like a butterfly.
Okay, and then that's and there always is that one line going right down the center of a guitar. So
Yeah,
that's
well,
the one you're talking about.
There's a set of sides that haven't been bent. That's going to be shortly. These have been joined together. I just glued this up. What I have to do next is cut out the outline, and then it goes through my drum sander and gets cut down to the correct thickness. A big drum sander that does that. Same with the top. This is German white spruce. If it doesn't sing like that, you don't want to bother making a guitar out of it. And there's a tremendous amount of instruments today that we're running out of wood that sounds good. Not all trees of the same species sound good, and they don't all sound the same. Like there's no two people that are alike, no two boards that are alike. And you can take a big pile of spruce tops. Every time you pick up a pair of them, they have a different voice. Some of them sound good, some sustain for a long time, some of them just die right away, it's just dead. It looks beautiful, but no sound. So I'll throw away or trade off the ones that
don't go. Well, you know, I read an article a long time ago, and I may not be stating this accurately, but it was about the, is it Stradivarius? Is that the way to pronounce it? Okay, violins, and the wood that they used to make those was wood that had been laying around for over 100 years, and that was the wood that he used, and they say that that's why those violins can't be duplicated, because they just don't, it's the wood that they're made from.
When I bought the German spruce in the early 70s, you could buy wood that was 40, 50 years old, sometimes 100 years old. The Germans have been storing just that one country wood. They've been being foresters, managing their trees for 300 years, ever since Stradivarius was making instruments. So they had a lot of stockpile, but then the folk boom happened. And you can't buy air-dried wood anymore. You go to any of the luthiers suppliers in this country now, They're selling you kill-dried wood. They've got to buy wet wood, it drives the water out of it in a hurry, which changes the character of the wood. And a lot of times it
results in a different sound.
It results in a different sound, but people get used to different sounds. It's half the reason I've collected so many different kinds of instruments. I don't want to hear what all those voices are. And like Ovation came out with a round-backed instrument made out of fiberglass. They made airplanes. They were an aircraft company. They had spruce from making airplanes. They said, let's make guitars. Nobody liked them. They couldn't give them away. They hired Glenn Campbell for $1 million or whatever it was to play it on his weekly program. Suddenly everybody liked Ovations. That's the way human beings are. You get adjusted to the different sounds.
There was an article that I read not too long ago about a guy in, I want to say Brazil, but somewhere in South America, and he started making guitars out of old rifles. And that's what he's doing. He is making guitars out of rifle wood. And they look like rifles, but they got strings on them. So, okay, what do we have here?
So this will be the next 6-string going together. You can see the type of neck joint that I put into it. The sides are attached to the neck. There's no dovetail, there's no bolt on anything. The neck is attached permanently to all of this. Then it's attached to the top and the back. Actually, the back's the last part that goes on.
Okay, and then this is the bracing, they call it. That's your style of bracing, because I believe...
I use 5 braces. I like them tall because structurally, engineering-wise, tall, skinny braces are stronger.
Can you see that, Joe? Let me kind of get over here. And you can see what he's talking about, how tall the braces are on that.
I don't have a...
Okay. Now pan over to some of this.
This is when I haven't done the inlay work on it yet. But there's, I said ladder brace 12-string. That's a 12-string top. I haven't put the plate where the bridge will go, but otherwise it has its pearl inlays. That's pretty much ready to go on the guitar. I can put a plate on it fairly quickly. And some of it's pretty stuff.
So how many hours do you think it takes? I mean, this sounds like each step is a lot of work and a lot of skill. So how many hours do you think goes into your average guitar? I know every project is different. You know?
It's really hard to say. I figure if I'm not doing a lot of anything except working on the new guitars, a new guitar will take me about 3 months to 4 months to build. However many hours that adds up to. You don't work 8 hours a day on one guitar. If I put braces on the top today, that's all that's going to happen to the top today. But I may do it on several. I'm actually trying to get set up to do that. I've been working in too tiny a space, entirely too long. I'm still cramped in here, but I can't expand to a bigger workshop because I need something that's dehumidified, air conditioned, totally, humidity controlled, which this area is.
Okay.
I mean, I went to great lengths to super insulate this shed. This is not your normal shed at this point.
And it sounds like you spent a lot of time in here. Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like you got the workings of a harp behind you too.
Yes, that's a project that I should get out of here. It's been here entirely too long, and the lady who owns it would love to have it back at this point. I'm pretty close to stringing it up.
Okay. She'll be happy to hear that.
These are, this most recent 12-string neck that I've been carving out. That's Bolivian rosewood. The facing is black walnut burl. This one's all made out of East Indian rosewood.
And you put all these pieces together, and you have a guitar.
Yeah. The neck's made by stacking up 1-inch boards sideways. And I put veneers in between them to make different, that's where the white lines in this come from. You see them down the back of the head.
Okay.
It also makes for a very strong neck. And for 12 strings in particular, I want strength, and I don't want to see it coming back again next year or any other time. And I try and stand behind what I build. And I've had to replace, I think, one instrument in my life. repaired a couple of cracks where they said, no, you can't have the guitar back. I said, you can fix it. Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, they wanted to keep it. They just want it repaired.
They just said,
Yeah. All
and
right.
come back to all of this is like how we're making mandolins out of this. This is a pecan tree from my front yard. It died of old age last year, and so I sliced it up. It was a 80, 90-year-old pecan tree. I got pieces to make enough to make big, full-size guitars out of it. And that's all drying in Minnesota right now. It will be sliced up and brought back down here next year, probably. This is just some I sliced up when I was there this last summer.
Amazing. It as education, so we're sending it out as an education piece, and that kind of.
I don't really spend a lot of time advertising, in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because I have way too much business
Already.
already. I have this huge pile of broken guitars. It's going to take me years to fix them all. I am certainly not looking for more to do.
How many years you got left?
I don't know. I'm 65 now. How many more do I get?
You get probably 30. But you better start working.
Yeah.
You know, that's 10 a year.
And I want to be building instruments. I want to turn out more new ones. I've wanted to do that since I got started. That's really what started it all, was trying to build good 12-string guitars of a voicing that was not available in the 60s and 70s, even today. Not really. There's luthiers that I know of. Seattle and Vancouver are full of them. There's 20, 30, 40 people there who make good instruments. But it's, I want to build out of some of the wood that I've collected over the years. Local rosewood. I mean, this is Pinellas County rosewood. It grew right here in Pinellas Park. I'm going to make a whole pile of mandolins and guitars out of this. I got a whole standing dead tree out of a guy's yard. Jim Kaufman gave me this stuff. He said, had to bring over my truck to pull the tree down. And I took it and had it all re-sliced up into thin pieces. So there's big piles of this now in thin pieces already sliced up. And this I've now had drying in here for 5, 6 years, maybe longer. That's all ready to make instruments out of.
Good.
Hopefully I will get the chance to do that. I'd like to build a lot out of the local materials, the local pecan, local rosewood.
Well, I'll tell you, if I ever
I
get
don't have to cut down a rainforest. It was dead already coming down.
Yeah.
So,
If I ever have a windfall, I'll be calling you up. Charlie, make me a left-handed guitar. Because you can't buy them.
Well,
not too
I
many
see 'em.
people have them. Yeah, they're out there. There ain't too many around, though.
No, there is some shop somewhere. Was it in Orlando? It's a left-handed guitar shop.
Huh.
Strictly left-handed instruments.
Yeah, I know I go online sometimes and look for it, and it's like, lefties.com or whatever for the lefty guitars. Yeah. So, okay.
I don't know what else I can show you here. There's more piles of wood. I can drag wood
Okay.
out all day.
Well, you did say something about a second floor that you had a bunch of guitars that you were.
If you want to look.
If we want to go up, maybe let's. Let's take a break and let's see if we can even get a shot up there or not. We'll be with you in a minute.
Could bring some of those instruments. Most of the instruments that I've got piled up here are, regal parlor guitar from the 30s, 1862 Martin, Lion and Healy pearl trim, Washburn mother of pearl trim. That's a Goya 6, 1900 parlor, bird's eye maple fancy trim. Now, there's generally all mother of pearl on those kind of things. It's just going down this one row.
I'm sure that I can't afford any of them.
Well, for some, I have no idea what they're worth. But
I'll buy that one then.
Here. How about this Italian
Wow.
made?
Look at that.
The back of the silver plate on the back says Lil con amore.
Do you know what it means?
To Lil with love.
Yeah, okay.
Con amore. And so whoever made this for Lil, this was a presentation piece to whoever Lil was. It's made in Italy. It's got a date in it, 1896.
I'll bet you we may be able to find out. You never know.
These are the kind of things I
internet.
really like to find.
Uh-huh.
The neck is covered entirely in tortoise shell. It's gilded, so the clear places show through gold. I mean, the original buttons would have been solid mother of pearl. Everything else on it is mother of pearl. I've been slowly restoring it. I have a few pieces left to put in on here, and I have the pieces that are not on the head. I have to redo those. I've worked on it several, for years now, but there's too many of these in the pile, and I just have to take them out one at a time now. But
You've got a great collection here, Charlie, that's for certain, and you've got years and years of work to restore them. And the thing that I notice is that there just aren't very many people in your business. I don't know how many luthiers there are in Florida. Do you?
4 or 5.
4 or 5 in the state. I know that they have.
All they do is build new instruments.
Yeah, and I know there's a school or something up in Canada I read about once, but
there are several schools in the country on teaching building luthiery, but they're mostly dealing with building new instruments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not repairing old ones.
Yeah, restoring old ones, there's going to be fewer and fewer people who do that.
So do you have an apprentice or anything like that working with you?
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
I have at times in the past, and the fellow who's my roommate right now says he wants to learn how to do this, but he hasn't been picking it up real quick.
Okay. Well, it doesn't look like something that you could pick up real quick.
Well, you have to just fix one instrument at a time, and you learn from the pile. And most of the ones that I get, they look like this. This is a good example. Now, that's a regal from the 30s, but it's made out of rosewood. It's got a solid spruce top, but you can hear that every brace inside of it is falling out. It's, the back is loose, it's just tied onto the string right now. Everything is apart. It's like a kit. Curly mahogany for the neck, which is pretty rare. You don't see it in today's guitars. Everything is straight. I put it back together again. I mean, right now, what is it? I'd probably pay $100 for this guitar in this shape.
Wow.
But when it's put together, it's probably worth $1,500 maybe, $1,200.
Yeah, but you're going to put a lot of
I
hours.
expect.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll put a lot of hours into putting it back together.
Mostly I'd lose out on that, but I still want to hear what these sound like. And when I find one in this condition, I don't know if anybody else will put it together. A local music store called me up and said, this guy wants $500 and everybody else is shucking and jiving and wants to give him $250 because it's broken.
Mm-hmm.
And they glued the neck back on badly and left pieces out, and it's all jagged around. It really needs some restoration. But this is 1953 ES 175. It's worth about $2,500 in good condition. I don't know if I'll get that much out of it, but I think I can fix this and patch in the hole that's missing. I mean, I can stick my finger inside of it right now. The piece of wood's just gone. But it's certainly worth putting back together. There's a bunch of musicians out there who would love to play on this instrument.
Sure. 1953, that's the year after I was born.
Yeah, well.
So there you go. It's 54 years old.
It'll get fixed.
Now, did that come in that case when you bought it?
Yes, and this is the original case.
Huh. It says Martell on there. What's N. Martell?
That was the guy who owned it.
Huh.
And actually his son called me up probably 7 years after I bought this, and wanted to buy it back because he was talking to one of his buddies who also had one at that same point from one of his father's friends. They bought them at the same time. This is broken because his father broke it over his head. Or across his back and shoulders. He explained it all to me. Then he wanted to buy it back for the $500. And I told him no. I'm going to give it back to him. His father's dead and gone now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why his father broke it over his back, but now he wants it back 7 years later. No, I'm sorry. This is going to get restored and put in the hands of a good musician. Thank you.
There you go. And hopefully one without a temper.
Yeah, well, I've got one post-repair job that I'm just finished putting together. It's a cheap plywood guitar. The guy broke it over somebody's head. Punched his head right through the back of the instrument, caved it all in. But if you want to pay to get it fixed, okay?
Yeah. Well, you've got quite a collection here, I must say that. Quite a collection of guitars.
I don't know how many.
So do you have any idea how many instruments you have? You must have 400 or 500 of them
400
anyway.
or 500, somewhere in that. I'm getting started doing an inventory here. It's probably going to take me another few weeks, a month, to just actually count everything.
Okay, now you said that you were doing this 40 years, about 40 years?
I started repairing instruments in 1964. I became a full-time profession in about 1968, 1970.
Now, how did you get started? You said that you worked for Gibson. Did you start at Gibson with your training, or before that?
No, there was nobody to learn from. There was no schools. I didn't want to apprentice to a violin maker for 7 years, which was the only option I had. So I just asked a million questions. And it took a long time to get the information out of different people, different places. Going to music stores, ask them about building of instruments, ask them where I could get materials. When you start finding suppliers of materials, they also start supplying how-to books. Irving Sloan was the only book on the market of how to build a classical guitar. That was the only book available on the subject.
And that's how you. So you taught yourself. You're self-taught.
Basically,
trial
yes.
and error, and
by
ask for help.
1972, I had my own business. I worked for a year with Belleville and Hoffman in Minneapolis. When Rod Belleville and Charlie Hoffman opened up their store, I moved in with them as kind of a silent third partner. I supplied half of the tools. I had the tools at that point that I'd gotten from my father. He built houses and shit like that. Pardon me. After a year with Charlie Hoffman, I founded my own business. And when I went to Minnesota, I asked Gibson if they needed a warranty service center, and they said sure.
Joe, are we going to be okay with that bright light behind them?
It's kind of tough, but
okay.
It's hard to do it any other way. Huh?
I'd turn it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's
Do you
go.
want me to drag any other instruments? I mean, there's so much stuff that I could pull out of here. There's just too much outrageous everything in some of these. I wish I could find the one that had the solid pearl fingerboard. I don't seem to find it right off. I thought it would be easier accessible. But that's the trouble. That's why I need an inventory. Now, stuff isn't labeled well enough. Some of it's not labeled at all. Some of it you just yank it open and say, well, what's in the case? Sometimes it's a surprise.
So do you know Elaine Chelford?
Yeah. Fancy curly maple. This is about 1870s.
Wow.
There's
Maple.
a lot of these. I look for the really old ones. Curly maple and with inlay striper on the middle of the side.
Now, is that the type of wood that you were saying that you had some from downstairs because one maker didn't like the curly maple? Is that the same type of?
This is curly maple. Oh no, a lot of makers like it. It's just not in pieces big enough to make big instruments, or make neck blanks and so forth. They don't find much of that anymore. This looks like the stuff that you'd find in a high-grade violin. It's the same kind of soft maple, real fine curl to it. I have no idea who made this. No labels. It's bridges rattling around inside. That's normally the way I get them.
Well, you know, I'd just like to say thanks for showing us your shop, Charlie. We're running out of time. And again, that's Arrowhead Music in Safety Harbor, and you can look them up in the yellow pages under Arrowhead Music, correct? Yes. And he'll build you a guitar if you want, or if you have something that needs to be repaired. Apparently, he looks like the guy to come to because, truth be told, I don't really know any place else you can get it done, you know. Although I guess you can bring it to a local store and have some kid fix it. Or, you know, and maybe do a good job, you know. Who knows?
If you put a big hole in your favorite antique instrument, I'm the one that you want to talk to.
There you go. If you got a brand new instrument, bring it to a other guitar shop. If it's an old antique one, Charlie's the guy. Yeah. All right. Thanks again, Charlie.
You're welcome.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you the price of your guitar, and I figured, well, let's leave that one out there because I know they got to be expensive.
I generally start there.
Hopefully, some rich guys will see the show and contact you. And then I'll give you a copy